bald police officer is tracking a criminal gang. Suddenly, a hooded man walks into the lair with lightning-quick movements, destroying all the guards. When the policeman discovers the aftermath, he finds the corpses of the criminals scattered all over the floor. The killer is none other than the accountant. In 1989, a boy named Chris who had autism was sent to a neurological research institute in America. Sitting opposite him was his brother in the waiting room, while a little girl named Justine, who had difficulty controlling her behavior, was also present. In the talk room, the hospital director informed Chris's parents that he was autistic. However, the director also mentioned that Chris was an extraordinary boy. The director advised them that there were certain things that Chris needed to avoid, such as bright lights or loud sounds, as they could be overwhelming and scary for him. The director advised the couple to let Chris stay at the institute for the summer. However, due to his rigid nature, Chris's father did not agree. Being a military man, he always had a strict demeanor and believed that if the boy was afraid of something, he must learn to cope with it instead of running away. As the conversation continues, Chris finishes putting together a complex puzzle, but becomes distressed upon realizing that one piece is missing, leading to a panic attack. When this happens, Chris copes by repeatedly reciting the same rhyme. Fortunately, someone offers to help and provides the missing puzzle piece. After this incident, Chris's parents start arguing, as the father's strict upbringing comes under scrutiny. Eventually, the couple gets divorced, and the mother remarries. Chris's father, who fears that his son will be bullied, starts training his two sons from a young age. The training was so harsh that it produced a tough Chris who could knock down anyone who dared to mock him for his autism. As he grew up, Chris also joined the military and became an officer. Once, when he was with his father, they heard the news of his mother's passing. They went to her new husband's house to attend the funeral. But at that time, the guards did not allow the two of them to approach. Due to his inherent autism, it was difficult for Chris to control his emotions, and he ended up knocking out 6 officers without any weapons and with countless serious injuries on the bodies. But during the fight, one of the officers opened fire, and Chris's father was killed at his mother's funeral. Chris was then taken to prison, where he became close with a big-time money launderer. The two of them developed a friendship, even with guns pointed at their heads. However, one day, the money launderer was released from prison. As a big money launderer, he was immediately chased and brutally executed by a rival gang. After hearing the news of his only friend's death, Chris went crazy and nearly beat a jailer to death with an iron jar before escaping from the camp. Since then, no one has seen Chris until one day. The camera recorded a hooded man walking on the street, killing people with a small knife in his hand. He moved so quickly that it was difficult for the naked eye to see. The man then burst into the gang's lair, the same gang that killed the money laundering boss. He killed every single one of them with only bullets through the head, causing the last boss to scream like a child. That person was Chris. A bald policeman saw the commotion and immediately went to check, but it was too late to go inside. As soon as the bald police officer saw the scene, Chris pointed a gun at him from behind. In front of the barrel of a man so terrifying, the policeman also urinated in his pants. Chris asked the policeman if he was a good father. The cop trembled and replied, "I might be a bad cop, but I am a good father. I have 2 grown children." After saying that, Chris dropped his gun and disappeared. Since then, he has actively contacted the bald policeman through calls made by a woman's voice. This woman claimed to be Chris's assistant and would often contact the policeman to report impending crimes. The bald policeman didn't know where they were getting their information from, but everything they reported was 100% correct. To confirm Chris's identity, the bald policeman sent a female police officer to investigate. The captured images shows that Chris always worked with criminals and used various disguises to conceal his identity. But he is extremely smart, always hiding his face from the camera. On Chris's side, he is now setting up a small accounting office in disguise. Currently, Chris is helping an elderly couple in the neighborhood with their tax returns. After work, Chris goes back to his house and starts practicing with his shotgun. Chris placed 3 targets on a log, then prepared to aim from an impossibly long distance. With just 3 accurate shots, the 3 wooden figures were shattered. Afterwards, he went back to his room, turned on loud music with flashing lights, along with the wooden stick. He constantly inflicted injuries on himself, which is how Chris faced his fear, as his father had told him. One day, he received an invitation from a company that specializes in producing robot parts. The CFO, Mr. Ed, and Miss Rita had noticed a loss of money in the treasury. They hired Chris to come and count the entire cash flow to see where the money went. Chris then met Lamar, the head of the company. There he also met a girl named Dana, an accountant working for the company. Dana and Chris had a conversation. Dana was quite curious about Chris' water bottle, to which he simply replied that it had diuresis was because he had hit a warden's head so hard with it that it was distorted. That night, with the intellect of Einstein and a diuresis the brawn of Mike Tyson, Chris counted the company's entire cash flow for the past 15 years. After only one night, he was able to decipher the numbers, revealing that total losses amounted to $64 million. A diarist Chris informed them that they had started to get a clue as to who had lost the money. However, a surprise came soon a diarist after. At midnight, a group of assassins broke into the house of the CFO, Mr. Ed. They forced him to overdose on drugs, causing his death to appear as an accident. These assassins specialize in receiving money to kill people, working for the organization and acting extremely ruthlessly. The next morning, Chris arrived but was sent home without any further investigation. Returning without answering, Chris was about to shoot when an old neighbor called for help. She and her husband had been captured by the killers themselves and were being forced to reveal Chris' location. While one of the killers with curly hair was forcing the old woman to call Chris, a bullet suddenly flew from nowhere and hit the curly-haired killer, killing him instantly and saving the old couple. The bearded man inside saw what was happening and panicked. As he was about to go out, 2 rounds of gunfire continuously bounced off the window. The scared bald man dragged the couple into the car. At this time, Chris appeared with a decisive shot that punctured the car's tire. He quickly jumped on the roof of the car and broke the rear window with his knee. Then Chris pulled at the bearded man, and they both rushed to the front of the car. The bearded man, upon seeing Chris, immediately drew his knife. Chris calmly pulled out his belt and used a few basic moves to make the bearded man panic. He dodged the attacks, but Chris quickly locked him in a hold, threw him to the ground, and used a stranglehold to incapacitate him. The bearded man was now scared and revealed that his boss had received an order to kill Chris and a girl named Dana. It must have something to do with the robotics company Chris used to work for. After finishing off the bearded man, Chris set off for Dana's house. With the help of his telephone assistant, Chris found Dana's address. On the other side, Dana was being followed by 2 guys dressed as multi-level marketing representatives, while 2 other guys disguised as packing people rushed in. The bearded man also rushed in from outside, holding onto Dana to prevent her from protesting. However, Dana used an iron frame to hit the bearded man on the head and ran into the bathroom. While Chris arrived without hesitation, he rushed towards the first bodyguard who had cornered him and quickly delivered a blow to his brain, finishing him off. The second guy saw Chris approaching and prepared to attack, but who expected to be treated very neatly by guys. The other guy in the room became extremely wary when he heard the noise outside. He opened the door to check and was immediately knocked out by Chris inside. Dana was cornered when Chris arrived. Chris shot, but the bearded guy dodged. He tried to hold on to Chris, but couldn't. Chris quickly gave him an elbow, smashed the sink, and finished him off with 2 more shots to the head. Chris's expression remained unchanged even after taking action. And Dana looked at the scene with widened eyes, wondering how an accountant could do something like this. Realizing that Dana was in danger, Chris quickly took her with him to gather her belongings. Dana was revealed to have an arsenal of weapons and paintings worth millions of dollars in his mobile home. They quickly took refuge in a hotel to avoid being seen or heard. While the policewoman is investigating Chris, she discovers that he had set up an accounting office to disguise his dealings with the gangsters. However, the money from these transactions was not kept for himself but was donated to a psychiatric research institute. After obtaining Chris's address, the policewoman and the bald policeman arrived at his house. They went inside and searched, finding that the house was fortified and equipped with a machine gun. As they were checking, the bald cop was narrating the entire story to the policewoman when a call came in. Chris's assistant called and told the 2 of them not to ransack Chris's house. She could see what they were doing. On the other side, Chris left Dana at the hotel and went to investigate. With the information provided by the assistant, Chris found out the whereabouts of the killer. He followed the assassin, who eventually discovered him and used a gun to shoot at Chris in order to escape. Chris was unable to chase after him and went to Mrs. Rita's house to find that she had been killed with a bullet through her head, just like Chris had predicted. The next night, Chris decided to break into the assassin's lair. So the person behind everything is old Larma. He secretly withdrew all the company's money into his pocket and now wants to kill people to eliminate any witnesses. The henchmen protect the old man very strictly and contact him every few minutes. But who would have thought that in those few short minutes, Chris was able to kill 2 guys and snatch their pistols, ready to counterattack. The uncontacted henchman became wary, with one peering out a window, revealing only a shiny head. Immediately, a bullet flew at a speed of 900 meters per second, piercing through the window and killing him. The assassin ordered his soldiers to hide, and the room full of glass was now completely ruined. The henchman immediately took orders and went out to approach Chris. The leading assassin checked the camera while the other henchmen threw smoke bombs to block the view. However, as a result, one guy walked past and got a bullet in the middle of his head. The rest continued to move forward. Who would have expected bullets to fly out of nowhere? Chris took advantage of the hidden corner and the darkness to go around and quickly kill each one. They collapsed after only 1 or 2 shots. Chris climbed onto the roof to avoid the camera and continued inside. In the corridor, He killed one guy. The other two came forward. The first one to receive the bullet was right there. The second guy tried to duel but failed. He continued inside and encountered a bald soldier. The two struggled and broke the glass. The bald guy took advantage of his superior health and tried to attack Chris with a massive blow. But he didn't expect that Chris would be so hard to play against. He used locking attacks and even stole grenades from the bald guy, stuffing them in his body and holding them until they exploded, ultimately finishing the bald guy off. After overcoming his opponent, in a tense moment, Chris sat down and kept reading about the familiar rhyme inside. The assassin captain heard it and suddenly realized. He slowly walked towards Chris and, when Chris saw the killer's face clearly, he recognized it. The assassin he was looking for was his own brother. After the death of his father, Chris left, setting him off on a long search. The younger brother, in anger, rushed to hit his brother. Chris could only say sorry until he hit back, and the younger brother immediately lay on the floor. It was ironic when the two brothers met again in this situation. Old man Larma then came out from inside the room and began to gain momentum. Joke explained why he had embezzled the company's money. I just took that money to charity, not for me to be greedy. As a result, Chris didn't care and gave him a reduced punishment for him to sell salt. Chris then walked out of the building, saying that he would find his brother later. At the end of the movie, this is when we see the mental institution where Chris had raised money. It was the grown Justine, and on the wall was a picture of Chris sitting on the computer. The girl was able to use it to talk, so Chris's mysterious assistant was her. Dana was unable to contact Chris, but she received a photo of a pack of dogs playing cards. When she tore it open, she found a photo Chris had given her inside. On Chris's side, he set out again to find a new identity to disguise himself. This is the end of the movie. Bye bye and see you in the next videos. Hey, how did you guys like the video? Let us know in the comments section below, and if you found it interesting, please give us a like and a subscribe to support our channel for our upcoming videos. Thanks everyone.